Hey everyone, welcome to Dentistry Unmasked. I'm Pam Maragliano-Muniz. With me as always,
Hey guys, David Rice. How are you, Pam? What's shaking?
every once in a while you just have to think back.
Hmm.
We always say hindsight is 2020. And I remember when I bought my practice, the way that it was structured, the seller had a broker, and the broker also served as as part of the deal, I got consultant services for, I don't know, a short time. And part of that was getting my contracts all changed over into my name. And, if I was going to go into any in network plans, like they just sort of credentialed me. It was just sort of like, here, let me fill this all out for you. You sign it all and you just go on with your day. So that's how we're going to help you, quote unquote. Little did I know now, looking back, there's a whole thing that we should be doing before we sign our name to any sort of insurance contract. And that involves negotiation. So I just learned this the other day. So again, I was today years old when I heard that there's people like Angela Holland in this world. So Angela, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you both.
I'm excited to learn some stuff too. I'll tell you what, if you're playing in the insurance world out there, which many, many, many practices are, they play some games, don't they?
They are known for playing games, and I think that dentists are intimidated, rightfully so, because they don't quite know how to play the game. They've never been taught. And that is where people like myself and my team come into play. We are able to help you win with insurance.
How do you do that?
Sure. So there's a couple different avenues or conversations that we can have in regards to insurance. The first would be like yours, Dr. Pam. It's when you purchase a practice or you start up a practice and you go through the credentialing process for the first time. Credentialing, simply put, is becoming recognized with insurance companies, whether you become an in or out of network provider. What this means is basically you're recognized as a credentialed dentist, as a credentialed doctor with the insurance company. So what we can do instead of just accepting the fees that they offer is that we actually have negotiating power from day one. So there are different things that come into play based on selling doctor, or if it's an acquisition, or if it's a startup, we still have negotiating power, and it really takes an expert to know how to proceed with that process. It's very time consuming, very tedious. It's not difficult work, but it must be followed through properly in order to be successful.
So, how do you have credentialing, or I'm sorry, negotiating power before you even sign up? I think that a lot of people think that calling their rep and being like, can you do better for me? Nope. Okay. Like that's a negotiation. Walk us through that process. And how do you have that power before you even have a relationship?
Absolutely, that's a great point. So it can come into play where if you were an associate at another practice, there's some power there from your previous fee schedules. It also has to do with your office or practice location, the zip code. So what we do is we start with reasonable UCR fees or industry standard UCR fees based on your practice zip code. And most consultants or most influential people suggest being somewhere between 80 to 90%, some say 85% for UCR fees. So what we do is we start with your UCR fees. If you have a selling doctor, if you're acquiring, we can also go off of their fees if they've recently had them negotiated. Or we can start from scratch utilizing your UCR fees or your previous associate fees at the other location. And then we go from there. This comes with, it can be a back and forth conversation anywhere from one encounter. Sometimes I say, I'm not here to play games with you guys. Give me the best fees. And just based on my experience, I know what fee schedules they're offering to different locations. So sometimes I'm able to see just from the first time they send it over, hey, this is as high as we're going to get. But other times, the encounter and negotiation process can be back and forth with an insurance company 3, 4, 5 times before we lock in on a fee schedule that's fair. So the negotiating power comes through education, follow-up, and continued communication. And I truly believe that the more times that you have your hands in the insurance pot, the more relevant you're going to become with the practice and the communication between the insurance companies. So I have quite a few, I'll call them friends. I talk with them regularly, never met them, but that work at insurance companies. And they're my go-to person. So when I have a practice in this location, or when I have a practice that we're going to credential with that insurance, I reach out to that rep directly and we get the best fees as quickly as possible.
So when you go back and forth, when you go back and forth like 3, 4, 5 times, what's that timeline like? Because especially with a new associate or you're trying to get started in a practice, you want to get going. And so, this could be really time consuming.
It can, and that's a great point. So there are some insurances that do not negotiate fees. We will still try, but for example, I actually worked with a dentist last month. We negotiated Delta Dental of Wisconsin, unheard of, but that doesn't happen regularly. So there are certain insurance companies that don't negotiate. So we'll quickly get you set up with those, and those can turn around. I mean, Delta can sometimes turn around in 2 weeks, depending on if you're already recognized or not with them. And then with the other long-term negotiations, usually the provider has or the patient has out of network benefits. So what we will recommend is to make sure that the new provider, the new owner, the doctor that we're credentialing, make sure that they're always doing proper insurance verification at the front desk. And then we simply ask, do you have out of network benefits to the insurance company? At that moment, we will know if that patient has out of network benefits and what those fees are. So then the provider is getting reimbursed based on UCR. So actually during the credentialing period, you can get reimbursed higher reimbursements from insurance. And still there's ways to work. Like if you acquire a practice, you don't just want to go in and charge patients more than they've ever been paying for dental services. That would be a great way, to start an attrition line. And so what we will recommend is honor the in-network fees that the selling doctor had, or there's just different workarounds that we coach the practice through. So the turnaround time can be anywhere from, I've seen it, as short as 2 weeks all the way up to 9 months. But we have workarounds to make sure that there is constant cash flow from the insurance companies. We understand that there are student loans that are now relevant. There are practice loans that are relevant. And we want to make sure that you are profitable and lucrative from as quickly as possible from day one when you start performing treatment.
So when it comes to UCR, how do the practices around you impact your ability to negotiate? I know that's a thing.
Yes, it's totally a thing. So it's super important that practices are reporting higher UCRs or standard UCRs. I cannot tell you how often we go into a practice and we pull what their UCR fees are, and they're at national average of 40th percentile for their zip code. All of that impacts what insurance companies are willing to reimburse based on that demographic. So it's super important that when other practices in your area, if it's a higher demographic, you make sure that you match those, UCR fees from day one. So another thing is sometimes doctors will get concerned, like, what if we have higher UCRs and we lose patients if a patient calls crown shopping or price shopping? As long as you're within the industry standard, which will provide that to all the practices, as long as you're within that 80th to 90th percentile based on your zip code, chances are if they call the practice next door, if they call the practice, 3 streets down, you're going to be pretty darn relevant with your fees.
Can I just say, don't just quote your fees over the phone. Why do people do that? David, did you ever do that?
We never quote our fees over the phone. Usually when somebody calls, in our practice, people will be like, oh, do you even take our insurance? I'm like, well, you know what? Sounds like you're looking for a dentist. Like, let's talk about why you're calling me first, and then we'll get into the details of it. But yeah, people jump to giving a number, but I don't think most people ask that number because they really want it. They just don't know what to ask us.
Totally agree with that. And I also think that allowing insurance or price of treatment to dictate what the patient needs is not the way to go about treatment. You know, you guys are the experts and the doctors. So prescribing what is necessary is always, you know, the most important for the patient.
I totally agree. So tell us a little bit about you, because you have a journey with what got you to where you are right now. So I would just love to hear that. And then, because I mean, what you're doing is not new to you, but kind of new to you letting this out into the world.
Absolutely. So in 2013, I started working with a medical and dental software company, working as a practice consultant in the state of Arizona for a company. And I worked with the best dentist, office managers. I was in practices every single day, and I saw what a truly successful practice metric looked like, and versus those practices that were truly struggling, and dentists that were taking out home equity lines of credit to pay their team members. And so I saw such a vast array of different types of practices and how they were being run. And I became super passionate about teeth and dentistry, as funny as it is. And so I love the business side of dental operations. And so I left that job. I started working for $15 an hour as a front desk girl in a practice. And I started with the very basics, checking patients in, working reception, and doing insurance verification. Over the course of maybe 3 years, I worked from that position up to office manager of another practice and worked with some of the best doctors. He taught me so much about leadership and ownership and dentistry as a whole, and my passion grew. But what I did see is that there was such a need for insurance experts in the industry that also had the ability to coach and guide a dental practice, or coach and guide a patient on how to receive the treatment, pitch the treatment, or present the treatment. So I started a company in 2019 prior to COVID, and we did insurance billing for practices nationwide. I started at my kitchen table working 14, 15 hours a day. My husband would leave for work and come home, and I was in the exact same spot. And my passion continued to grow because I was helping dentists grow their practice in a realm that was not really discussed. It was kind of taboo. It was the scary part of practice ownership for so many doctors. And I wanted to help them become less intimidated and allow an expert to handle it for them. So my company grew pretty rapidly, and I sold in 2023 to a NASDAQ traded company. And I have just been kind of taking a deep breath and soaking that in. It was just almost a year ago. And a couple months ago, you know, I was thinking, oh, I'm going to get out of dentistry, or, oh, I'm going to take a break. You guys, my passion just keeps calling me. I love helping dentists with insurance. It sounds so strange to say it out loud, but I love what I do. And the more practices that I help, the more dentists that I help, my passion grows stronger. So we are now offering credentialing and fee negotiation services to practices nationwide. So I am still helping in the insurance realm and the revenue cycle management realm, but from a different angle, to make sure that I'm abiding by the sale of my company and the agreement that I had with the purchasing company, of course.
So if you're new to ownership, either as and maybe let's call it a startup, you're a startup. What are the top like 5 things that most are doing wrong, and how do you come in and make sure that doesn't happen? Because this conversation happens all day, every day with young dentists we work with.
Absolutely. First of all, the big thing is they are not alone. This is a new journey for everyone that's stepping into that role. And what I see most commonly when it comes to insurance is, whether it be the selling doctor, the broker, or even the lawyer that's involved in the sale, is that they instruct the purchasing doctor that they can actually submit claims under the selling doctor's tax ID, even for a temporary period of 90 days is kind of the term that I'm told most often. And that's absolutely not true. That's actually considered insurance fraud. And I don't say that to catch anyone off guard or scare anyone, but to educate you. You don't know what you don't know. And once we know better, we do better. So the first thing is, as soon as you purchase the practice, make sure that you are submitting claims under your tax ID and under you as the rendering provider. It's super important. So we want to make sure that that is being done from day one. There are certain insurances that will not reimburse out-of-network providers. So you want to make sure that my number two is, so you want to make sure that the in-office team is doing a very good job when scheduling patients to make sure that they have out-of-network benefits during this credentialing period. A couple of other things that I'm seeing are practices that are just submitting all the claims. There are certain insurances that we do recommend you hold claims even for 30 to 60 days, just while we get things in order to ensure proper reimbursement for that time period. A couple of other things that I'm seeing in regards to insurance is that a provider will credential themselves and just kind of throw mud at the wall and see what sticks. So we want to make sure that instead of just credentialing yourself, you can invest a little bit of money in yourself, and it's going to pay for it tenfold, 100-fold, being networked properly and making sure that you're set up correctly from day one. The other thing is that when a new provider credentials, even if they credential themselves, you're usually locked into those fees for about 2 years with most PPOs. So you may think, okay, let me just hurry up and get this done. But really, you're almost shooting yourself in the foot for 2 years. So you could accept those much lower fee reimbursements and fees for 2 years during that very important time when you're first starting as an owner, when you need that cash flow, first and foremost. So I would say those are, I think I gave top 5. I think I did.
I think it's a big deal to start your practice and yourself, because to be frank, insurance write-offs hurt your confidence, definitely your emotional well-being sometimes when you see the number at the end of the year. And it's important to start your practice off on the right foot. But many are already in the game. And so now here you are accepting these fees, and now your hygienist comes in asking for a raise. And if you don't give it to them, they're going to go somewhere else. And with inflation and supply chain costs and all of the things that we're challenged with as dentists, how do we play that game now so that we can, so after the fact, like, is there a shot for us, or are we just kind of, SOL?
Absolutely, there's a shot, and absolutely. So a couple of important pieces for existing practice owners would be, you should be reviewing and increasing your UCR fees by 3 to 5% on an annual basis. That'll help with the inflation and raises of different employees, things like that. So that will help you with your overhead. So we start with UCR fees, and then insurance fee negotiations for most PPO companies are eligible within, some are 18 months, but most of them would fall under a 24-month category. So what we recommend at Preferred is that we would renegotiate your fees every 2 years, every 24 months. So there's a little bit of help annually with UCR fees, and then negotiations every 24 months.
So does that mean when you're working with somebody, do you tend to sort of perpetually work with them, or say like, hey, we got a great job done today, we're good for 2 years, let's circle back in 24 months?
Yeah, great question. So we do not keep anyone on a retainer because what we do is we reach out in 24 months and we say, can you believe it's been 24 months? We are ready to work again. And we do offer a discount for return clients, because we know that you're set up in a way that truly makes sense for your demographic. And it's a little bit less work, not completely, but a little bit less work. So we always like to thank our return clients with a discounted fee.
So how does it work? So you can doesn't really matter then where you are in your practice. So whether you're starting up or you're trying to get credentialed versus bringing on an associate versus being an established practice, it almost doesn't matter. Now is kind of a great time to revisit this topic.
Yes, you need us. You need us. No matter what phase of practice ownership you are in, you need us. And truly, it is my passion. My team and I work diligently day in and day out with insurance companies to make sure that these providers are receiving the best fees, so that instead of dreading the insurance patients or accepting insurance and can't believe you're accepting it, we want to help you get to a place where it makes sense for your practice and that you are profiting.
When it comes to numbers, you know, dental people are weird. We like numbers. Um, what's like a ballpark percentage that you'd say you go from, hey, here's where you are, to you can reasonably expect this? And I know it shifts based on company and demographics and things.
You're exactly right. So it will it does shift based on how many networks they're in, if they do negotiate all of that. But on average, we raise our practice fees 20% when we do fee negotiations. So on average, you could expect 20% increase.
And does that happen like kind of across the board, or do you see specific spikes and valleys depending on procedure codes?
So it can be a combination of procedure codes, or it could be how long they've been in practice. And if they have not negotiated I'm working with a doctor right now who has not negotiated for 10 or 15 years. We just got started with her yesterday. So her increase is going to be substantially higher than that 20%, average. So there's a lot of moving pieces to what goes into that average. So it could be even a 5% increase still will pay for itself time and time again.
I'm just going to like stretch this a little bit. I'm wondering, would there ever be a time where you're like, you need to get out of this plan? Like, this plan is just not good for you. Like, so I'm wondering that. And also, are there ever times you're like, hey, there's billing you can do outside of insurance that can help you get better, reimbursement to your practice, even if it's not coming from a third party payer?
Absolutely. So we have different. First, answer to your first question is absolutely. On a daily basis, we will say this plan is not serving your practice. Here's why. This is how many patients fall under this plan. So we're going to, we suggest that you go out of network, and you could bill out of network benefits and actually get a higher reimbursement for those patients. And you can still, because they're out of network, you can still honor a discounted fee. There's ways to work around so that the patient doesn't pay a higher out of pocket. And then, yes, so we can do different things to make sure. I mean, technically, if you're out of network, you can bill whatever fee you'd like, UCR fee, whatever fee you'd like. So there are some workarounds with doing out of network billing, or if we recommend falling under a TPA, a third-party administrator or an umbrella network, we can get higher reimbursement off the bat. But then it's going to drop some plans because not all plans fall under TPA. So there's definitely strategy to all of this, and the ability to still profit even from cash pay or from dropping plans. Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about that. You mentioned TPA umbrella plans. Is there a ratio of those two just participating with plans that people should really kind of stay within guide rails?
Yes, I never recommend doing more than 2 TPAs per practice. It's super important to be educated on how the TPAs operate. And one thing that office managers or the insurance coordinator may not be aware of, simply because they were never taught or it wasn't on their radar, is that TPAs can constantly change. So let's say that you fall under a TPA as a dentist, you're accepting, let's say, Connection Dental TPA. They have leased insurance companies underneath, but those leased contracts can change at any point. So just because a patient falls under this TPA today, their group or their employer group may drop out of that TPA at any time. So you want to make sure that whoever is accepting insurance or verifying insurance is well versed in how those TPA or third-party administrator plans work. And my team and I always educate our direct contact. We want to make sure that they are prepared and armed and ready to work, with each insurance that they're now accepting.
This is so interesting because a lot of people get credentialed with they think a plan and realize it. And then all of a sudden later, when it's time to get out, they're like, no, you're actually a network with 6 or 7 plans that you weren't even aware of. So I would imagine that working with somebody who kind of knows how to navigate this is going to save them a lot of time and a lot of heartache upfront and later.
Oh my gosh, yes, yes. And we don't charge an arm and a leg. We truly have very fair pricing, but that it's almost like insurance. It's like pay that premium because it is peace of mind. So, God forbid something happen, you always have that insurance to fall back on, but it's the same with credentialing and fee negotiations. Pay the expert. And then when we part ways, once the process is completed, you are educated in and powerful. Your team is more powerful in how your insurance processes and systems work for your practice. So they can be, the most successful team members for your office. Absolutely.
That's there's so much goodness here that people need to know. I don't think I go a morning or an afternoon, yet alone a full day, without this conversation coming up. So thank you for having it with us, Angela. This is really helpful. How do our friends find you?
Absolutely. My company is Preferred Dental Solutions. Our website is www.preferreddentalsolutions.com. And our email address is info@preferreddentalsolutions.com. And phone number, call, text is 302-236-8856. You'll reach me directly. My team and I are on standby. We are ready to help you grow your practice and help you be the most lucrative dentist you can be.
This is exciting. So everybody out there, I would love to hear your crazy insurance stories. So I think you should hit David and I up on Instagram and just like, after you listen to this podcast, be like, hey, you know what? I was taking X when I should be taking Y, or all of the things. So I guess I'll start. Not really it's sort of insurancy because it's about having your team trained. After I bought my practice, I realized that things just didn't seem right with billing. I didn't think there was anything shady going on. I just thought that there was maybe a lack of education, maybe with our electronic health record software or whatever else. So I hire my own consultant to come in and sort of look through everything. And it turns out that when you ran reports for my practice, I had $14 million of unclosed claims because my office manager at the time did not know you had to do that. And so there were so if you ran reports, it looked like I had all of these outstanding claims out there, and that was not the case. So that's fun. So please, we want to hear from you. We want to hear what's happening because we all have these stories. So please hit us up on Instagram. Angela, thank you so much for your time today. This is so enlightening, and it gives us hope that there's things that we can do to at least get paid to some extent what we should get paid. So this is amazing. So David, we're out of time, and everybody, we will see you all next week. Have a good one.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for watching or listening to the show this week. And thanks to our guests and sponsors on this episode.
Please check out our social media at Dr. Pamela_Maragliano and at Dental Economics Official.
Or you can check me out at Ignite DDS or at Dr. David Rice.
And go to dentaleconomics.com to receive dental economics. You can choose to receive DE in print or digitally, and you can also get the details of our Principles of Practice Management conference on our website.
If you have topics or guests or anything you'd like to talk about on the show, send us an email to dentistryunmaskedpodcast@gmail.com, and we will do our very best to make it happen. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.